Hey guys, Brent Hull Build Show, way up in the air, in the clouds, looking at this historic house, looking at Thistle Hill, talking about the old way of building, some lessons we can learn from way up here. Come join me today on the Build Show. Okay guys, so we're way up here, you know, there's downtown. This is Thistle Hill, you know, 1904, historic house, sanguinette and stats, an awesome neoclassical house, okay? We are up here because of things like this. Why? Okay, why is this falling apart? And we put scaffolding all around the building. It's gonna help us with the masonry. It's gonna help us with this carpentry repair. It's gonna help us with the roof. So we gotta get up on the roof and we gotta have this here. So this scaffolding is gonna be here for 4, 5, 6 months while we work on all this stuff. First thing is from the ground, we certainly see this decay. Now, why is it decaying? Because this is pretty sound. The paint's gone, so, you know, obviously needs some maintenance, but why did this rot out? And if we look up on top, we've got a copper roof that's been soldered together, okay? So these copper sheets come together and these are soldered, okay? So today you might do that with TPO. Historically, they did it with copper, but we've got an integrated gutter as well, okay? And this gutter, as this expands and contracts over time, it can develop leaks. It could be that heavy snow, we don't get a lot of heavy snows, but if there's snowing, it could get behind this flashing. But something's happened that water isn't coming off here and coming down and rotting this. Water's coming from inside. So if I look at this one's pretty sound, gone, I've got something in this corner that's happening that's gonna cause us to open this up and figure out what's going on, figure out where this leak is coming from, what's happening up in here. There's some flat spots, there's a bunch of rocks. That's mortar coming down from this building. We're gonna repoint the masonry, but I've got some maintenance issues that I've got to figure out and got to take care of in order to protect this. So let's look at how this is put together. Essentially, I've got a big dentil, okay, in between my bed mold. So here's my bed mold, the bottom part of it, top part of it, dental in between. Okay, this is an interdental, right? Because I've got that little setback right back there, but I'm looking at a dental all around this thing. These are modillions, okay? Meant to be the brackets or the tail end of the rafters that are going up. They are wrapped with the crown. So I've got modillions in here, wraps around. This is my corona, this is my cimation, okay? So you're looking at a mini cornice for an entablature, but those are the parts and pieces that are here and kind of, you know, how they're put together. We're gonna go back with, and I've been looking at this thing, these aren't things that come through, they've been tacked on. So these are beam pieces. It's probably 3 or 4 inches. Let's see if that goes up. So this is probably a, you know, 6-inch block that's been nailed onto this thing that we're gonna have to make and redo. The success here, okay, is gonna happen because we're gonna use the right wood. That grain texture looks like longleaf pine, okay? And I would say historically that longleaf pine makes a lot of sense. I don't know how much of this stuff has been replaced or repaired over time. I'm gonna assume, basically looking at that nail, okay, so this is 1904. We're not gonna have cut nails on this thing, but there you've got a finished nail, okay? And so I'm looking at the original wood. I'm looking at how it's put together. I hope there's no wasp out here because I can't run away. Yeah, I'm gonna say that this is longleaf pine, so this is most likely original, right? And so all of this stuff has to go away. The paint certainly was done later. Let me show you another thing they did. Look at this, that the top of this, maybe we'll look at it here so you can see this, but see how there's an offset? There's an offset here, and this is what's called a drip edge, okay? So that soffit comes over, but this fascia piece comes down. This is my corona that comes down and sits over top and hangs down. Why do they do that? So drip edge, okay? You're gonna find drip edges all around. It's one of those lost arts of building things that we've forgotten how to do. But even under this stone right here, there's a drip edge, okay? And so any place that water can get away or we need water to be pushed away from the building, we create a drip edge so that it doesn't run down the face of the building. Now, in this case, I think that this water penetration, see this, the fact that I've got paint chips coming off on the soffit here, okay? I know water's not coming around here. I know it's coming from inside. And that's why all this paint is peeling, and that's of course why these are rotted out. So something in this corner is messed up. We're going to have to repair it when we take the roof off, go back with a new top and a new thing. We're going to re-waterproof this thing. We're going to seal all this thing up so that we can go back and repair it. I'm going to show you something on the corner here you don't see very often, but I'm going to show you a rake molding and how those things come together and how they did it, how they built this thing 120 years ago. Really cool. Look at this, okay? This is not copper, this is galvanized metal, okay, that's been put over here. Now, if you think about it, the gable end of houses, when there's a gable end and there's this flat spot that runs across because we've got our cornice over there, typically what happens today is this gets framed up and this gets roofed. Okay, and I've talked about in a few of my videos that historically that isn't the way they did it. Historically they did metal, okay, and you're going to see metal and it actually goes up underneath here so that all the water is coming off this thing. This is not an area to slope up and put a roof down. Now, the reason guys started doing that in the 80s, okay, is because they got lazy, okay? We don't have time to get that, let's just roof it. And it ends up looking goofy on our houses. And so the historic way of doing these gable ends is to put metal down. These are hooked together and then they're soldered tight, okay? Metal is the proper way to do this, not with roofing material. And with the glazed tile roof, you're like, well, that'd be pretty. True, it might be pretty, but the historic way of doing it is doing this. One of the things I love is this corner right here, because what's happening is we've got a raking molding, okay? A raking molding is a molding that comes down the rake of your eave, okay? So this is a raking molding, and where it meets the simpatico molding coming from the straight, okay? So I got a straight molding coming across and I've got a raking molding coming down. Where those meet, okay, they can't meet properly, okay? And I've shown you this in a couple videos. I talked about this with my pediment video, is that straight molding is, let's say it's a 1x4, and this raking molding coming down, if I cut it to match that 1x4, it's gonna be about a 1x6, okay? It's gonna be too long. And you'll see how they've married these things together. It's not beautiful, okay? It is practical, okay, as far as how they put this together. This is coming out, it's barely cut square, and this is 45'd into it, almost coped into the back side of it. So check out this detail. It's a pretty cool, handy way of solving a difficult connection where all this comes together. There's two things I want to point out here, two things that I think are awesome. One is, look at this window, okay? It's a Palladian window with paneled pilasters on the legs that come down, these little corbels that sit up underneath, a beautiful scrolled bracket with a little finial on top. Finial's probably not original. An amazing display of architectural detail in a place that most people never see it. Okay, and that's one thing that's cool. There's the story about Elgin marbles, the marbles that came off the Parthenon in Greece, that even the backside and the pediment, even the backside of those statues that were in the pediment end had been carved and completely finished, okay? And it's this attention to detail, this old way of building, this love of craft, okay, that even in an area where you're never gonna see it, it's still beautifully done and beautifully crafted. I love that. The other thing I want to point out is this rounded arch, okay? So we've got a rounded, little bay window, for lack of a better word, that was added on. And look what you're seeing here. You see these lines going across here, okay? So the way they built this is they basically took boards and they stacked them together, maybe 2x6s, 2x8s, and they stacked them up, and then they cut the shape out of that, okay? So my cornice is basically made up of this brick, this big thick piece of wood that's coming across here. Now, look what's happening here, okay? There's no new nails, okay? These are old wire nails that have been used to put this together and hold it together, and it's rotting out. I've got, wood fiber and things, I mean, the paint's the only thing holding this together. And you can see right here is a piece of foam. Someone's kind of shot some foam in there, some kind of epoxy. Certainly this is another piece of epoxy that was put in there, right? That was part of the repair done here. This is just, completely falling apart, okay? When we go back and build this thing, we're actually gonna take wood, and there's a number of ways we can do it. We can steam bend the wood. We can, brick it up like they did it in making these things. We can make the molding on a curved molder head we've got at the shop. A lot of ways we construct this. What is gonna be the key to making this successful, okay? The wood. The wood we choose is the driver of success here. It isn't the way we build it. It isn't the shapes that we use. It isn't the construction methods. It's all wood. If we go to all this trouble and repair this whole thing and don't choose the right wood, we're screwed, okay? We are asking for trouble, and this repair that probably is 10 or 15 years old and obviously has failed is going to fail again and again and again. So our wood choice is the 98% of this decision as far as getting this right successfully. Let's go back to the shop. Let's go look at some woods. Let's talk about what's going to be, how this is going to be done successfully to make sure that when we go back with this repair, that we get it right. Okay guys, so wood. If you can get the wood right, you really will end up solving a lot of your problems, a lot of the failures. Now, what I've done is I put it kind of in a use and a don't use category. And so maybe we'll start with the don't use. A lot of this information is based on Forest Products Labs, okay? So that's a government thing that actually tests the decay resistance of the heartwood, okay? So a lot of technical details there, but basically if you're looking at a tree, there's heartwood, which is heart of the tree, and then there's sapwood. So they're testing the heartwood, the best part of the tree. If you look at this piece of longleaf pine, you can see sapwood, very light colored, the heartwood very dark colored. I mean, the first lesson would be use heartwood, don't use sapwood. But basically, Forest Products Labs has done this testing, and they put this category into very resistant, moderately resistant, and non-resistant. Now, most of these woods are going to fall into the non-resistant category. You know, this doesn't even include things like MDF, okay? Masonite, don't ever, use that on the outside. We're really talking about woods in Texas, okay, in the South, okay? And when you take a wood out of its reach, and if I take a western pine from California or Portland or wherever else and bring it to Texas, it doesn't do as well. If I take eastern white pine and bring it here, it doesn't do as well. We have a wet climate where there's a hot humidity, and those trees don't do as well. And so keeping the woods in its natural environment, it might work a little bit better. But the western pines, this would be the sugar pines, ponderosa pine, lodgepole pine, all of those pines that are kind of that western side of the United States don't do well here in the South. In fact, they rot out very quick. I've got poplar, maple, and red oak, okay? Now, you'll notice over here I've got white oak, okay? White oak's a very good exterior wood, red oak's a terrible exterior wood. So you gotta be careful that you're not getting red oak. But I've skipped over radiata pine. Now, radiata pine is what all the big window and door manufacturers use as their pine source. It's a very fast-growing western pine. It's terrible here. Most large manufacturers are using radiata pine. The point here is the reason those aren't lasting, because this is a non-resistant wood that doesn't last, okay? Over here we've got the used category and old growth wood, okay? So mostly we have virgin wood before 1940, but as the country moves across and expands west, we end up eating up all our virgin forests. And so after 1940, we really don't have much old growth wood. So salvaging longleaf pine or salvaging these old timbers, this is a 1921 building. All these posts in here are longleaf pine. This would be a building that could be salvaged and reuse the lumber. Mahogany is good, teak is good, fir is good, redwood is good. White oak, obviously very good. Longleaf pine, I just mentioned that. Eastern white pine. Now, what you'll see here is I've got OG, okay? Old growth, okay? So if you go to try to buy redwood at a lumber yard today, it's gonna be all finger jointed and you'll see all this sapwood in it. I don't recommend buying redwood today anymore. Getting those old growth woods is really important. We did a church over in Dallas where we restored these Gothic style windows that were in incredible shape, built from about 1930. All old growth redwood. It was probably the finest wood I've ever dealt with that didn't have any decay or any rot. So all that old growth wood is wonderful. In the mahogany category, I'm including sapele, right? We do our windows and doors with sapele. You can see maybe how I'm holding this. It's a really heavy wood, but look how dense it is. It's wonderful for millwork. This is what we're using for our 100-year window. This is what we're using for our doors. So sapele is really good. This is a piece of old growth longleaf pine. It's really good. It's a great exterior wood. One of the things that makes it good is look at the growth rings per inch. Look how tight that growth rings are. That means it's a very stable piece of wood. This is a piece of poplar, okay? Poplar's in the don't use category. Poplar is great for it. This is a piece of interior trim. Poplar is great for that because it's not going to have any climactical changes, right? It's not going to go through heat and wet cycles. It's not going to get cold, and so it's a really good, stable, paints really well. Interior wood, do not use it on the outside. In this category are two other things, Akoya and Kiboni, okay? Now, I said don't use radiata pine. Well, both Akoya and Kiboni are radiata pine. Okay, what gives, Brent? Basically, Akoya pickles their wood. If you smell the end of it, it smells like vinegar. Kiboni is through a heat process and also chemically. They have redone the molecules, taken all the sugars out of the wood. It's very stable. It's a weird wood. I had a piece of Akoya and I wrote on the top of it Akoya, and that the ink from my pen went all the way through the wood. So they have changed the chemical structure of the wood to make it very stable and a good exterior wood. We'll run exterior moldings out of Akoya and Kiboni because they paint really well and they don't move and they're very stable and they don't rot. Thermal wood is another one of those processes where they're actually heating the wood. I think it's about 400 degrees, and they're cooking everything out of it, and it becomes, these new growth woods become very stable. We are still back priming. Back priming means that you're taking the back of the board and you're priming the back of the board. So you're priming it all the way around, you're sealing it in. Helps. High gloss paints. We don't do any exterior wood anymore without painting our high gloss paints on it because the pigments last longer. There's a shell over top of it. It doesn't stay high gloss for very long, but it's a much more durable exterior paint. We don't allow finger joints in any of our wood. Now, finger joints are basically, see where this piece of wood has been joined together? You're going to see these little cuts in here, and that's how they're joining it together. Now, the reason they're doing that is because you can't take a board, cut it in half, and expect glue to sit here and stand. So they cut these fingers in it, okay, so that the glue surface gets here and here. It doesn't do anything on the end grain, but it makes it last a little bit longer. Well, it doesn't last very long and it doesn't work. And so it's a cheap post-1940s way of putting wood together that isn't very good. So no finger joints, and then we use stainless fasteners because they don't rust. So see what I've done here, guys? There's tons of information involved in picking the right wood and figuring it out. And so it is not a matter, and I do not want you to just go, well, I'll get something at the lumberyard, because most likely it's not good wood, and you really need to fight for the good wood if you want something to last. Remember, Thistle Hill, we're up on that scaffolding way up in the air. You don't want to have to set up scaffolding and go redo that thing again. We want a 100-year fix on that eave. We want a 100-year fix on any kind of water infiltration and damage. And so the only way you're doing that is if you use good woods. Use these, don't use these. I hope that helps.